episode number 100 of the Cozy Corner of Cinema, being recorded on Saturday, February 24th, 2024, at 12:41 p.m. on a chilly early afternoon day. You know, I woke up yesterday, and it was just ending. Just a downpour out there, so it was great, you know, to get all the dirt and stuff off the car. It's parked outside, and, you know, it's just great, you know, if you don't got to go to work and you just hear the rain outside. I mean, that's just a total cozy feeling right there. That's just like if you had some sort of list or compendium of just those sort of totally beautiful, majestic kind of cozy moments in your life. That would definitely be one of them. Of course, it's all subjective. We'd all have different lists and compendiums and everything of the sort, but just that feeling of just being in bed under the covers, resting against just a warm pillow, with the rain outside, the cats are inside, sleeping, enjoying life as they are. It's just such a wonderful, wonderful feeling, and it's just a totally blessed kind of feeling, man. Just truly great to be here, be alive, be on Earth, man. It's just second to none. So last week, I started to talk about Paul Schrader's 2013 film. I think it was 2013. Let me double check that, actually. Yes, it was 2013. Listed on the Internet Movie Database. I was talking briefly about The Canyons, directed by Paul Schrader, written by Bret Easton Ellis, starring Lindsay Lohan and James Deen, as well as Nolan Gerard Funk and Amanda Brooks. And it's such a fascinating film because I don't remember what I talked about last time. However, get my notes up here. Should be a little bit more organized than this. Here we go. Okay. Cross that out so I don't end up going over that. Yeah, okay. So it's a very interesting film. I remember when it came out, it was receiving a lot of negative attention. It was... Paul Schrader is such an interesting filmmaker in that I don't think he has any outright terrible films. I think in all respects, they're at least interesting to some regard. Even some of his directed work that I may not be as big on, I think all of them, and I haven't seen all of his directed films, there's still a few of which I haven't seen, so I can't give any sort of expert sort of opinion on his filmography. But actually, coincidentally enough, speaking of which, I recently, maybe I'll talk about that after, because I rewatched another Paul Schrader directed film last night, and perhaps I'll talk about that maybe later if I remember, or if I get to it another time. But yeah, The Canyon. So you have this main girl, Tara, played by... there's me not silencing my telephone. It seems to happen every episode. And maybe I'll learn. Maybe I'll learn next time. But Tara, living in LA. She is living with her manipulative boyfriend, Christian, played by adult film actor James Deen, that's Deen, and they have a questionable relationship, to say the least. James Dean's character, what's his name? Christian, I just said, he is a very manipulative person, you know. He is very controlling over Tara. He's a trust fund kid, so he's got a lot of money. They live in a very elegant, beautiful mansion overlooking the hillside. It's just a beautiful, picturesque kind of place. And I should say that there's some great photography done in this film by Paul Schrader. There's these sequences of these abandoned exteriors of these... I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. There's these exteriors of these abandoned cinemas, you know, with nothing on the marquees, and then sometimes we get some shots actually inside of the cinema with the dilapidated interiors, the seats that have been worn, you know, torn to hell. It's just sort of like a dying sort of architecture, not archaeology. Two completely different things. I find myself often saying architecture when I mean archaeology, and so on and so forth. Anyways, and it's funny, I was just talking to an acquaintance earlier this morning about, we were talking about some of the cinemas that went the wayside during the COVID pandemic, and how he had lost some, and thankfully out here we didn't really lose any. We only had one open here that was about 50 minutes, an hour away from where I am now, and I was going there a lot to do whatever I could to help the cinema, because you don't want to lose these places, man. It's just, these are just, I mean, it's like a church in a way, you know. It's like a communion of people coming together to experience just something bigger than our own kind of lives, man. That's just the beauty of cinema. Cinemas as an actual location, but we get this great photography there. And anyways, I'm going off topic there, but anyways, I'm talking about is sort of the underbelly of Hollywood. We have this controlling relationship where James Deen, Christian, is sleeping around with another girl, and he starts to become paranoid that Tara is sleeping around with an actor who's going to be the star of this big Hollywood production. And ironically, you know, they have this thing where they have something of a, I would say, somewhat open relationship, but it's more like Christian is really kind of looking over it. So, like, he'll invite guys over and he'll film them having sex with Tara. And they'll have sex with like couples and stuff. And it's a very strange relationship. He sort of does what he wants to do, but he doesn't want her to do certain things. And he starts to push his limits and get into the lives of these other people. And they're talking about this guy's manipulative. He's gaslighting you. He's I don't think that was a widely used term back in 2013, gaslighting. And maybe they used it in the film. I don't remember, but I hear that much more now. But when this film came out, it got a lot of talk because of not just the film's quality, which wasn't very strongly received, but as well as the production on the film. There was some issues with Lindsay Lohan, and I don't know all the specifics. I read some things and I listened to some interviews, and it seems like Paul Schrader, you know, he is no he's not new to troubled actors on production. I mean, Blue Collar. It's kind of famously, you know, the trouble production on that between, Richard Pryor and Yaphet Kotto and Harvery Keitel not getting along. And, I mean, you watch the film and you never would have known because they play off each other so well. But here, you can kind of see maybe some things that, could be questionable. I think Lindsay Lohan around this time was starting to get sober, or maybe she was. I don't exactly know. Again, I'm not interested in the lives of celebrities. I'm purely looking at this from a contextual production standpoint, but I know there was trouble there, and I watched an interview with James Deen. He was talking about how he was. I don't want to paraphrase him because he had a comment that he made that actually kind of summed it up pretty well. He was like, I had no expectations going into this, so if I have nothing to lose, if things go well or they don't, I'm focused on me, and that's just a great mindset to have. And actually, ironically, I was looking up a little bit that a couple years after this film, he did get into some trouble himself with some alleged assaults, and I won't go into that. You can look that up on your own, but it was interesting learning about that in the context of his character in the film. But it's a very interesting film, and I think one like this, it's very easy to write it off as, some of the dialogue is stinted, some of the acting is stinted, which perhaps I'm the minority on. I don't think any of the performances were outright terrible. I just don't think they were directed very strongly. I think James Deen, some of his dialogue, it's not bad per se, but I don't totally buy him as a manipulative. His character is this manipulative sort of guy. He uses sex to his advantage. There's one part where he wants a guy to manipulate another guy into having sex with him, and even though he's not going to do it, I don't think he's a bad actor at all. I just think that it's strange. I even made a note that the acting quality ranges between edits, where you'll have some sequences where it'll be some well-performed dialogue, and then the next edit, it'll be like bizarre. It's like they filmed it on a different day, which is probably the case. I mean, you watch these films, and if you have a dialogue exchange, it very well could be shot over X amount of time. It's not going to always be shot in that one sitting, but it was just something that I've almost never noticed before in a film, where literally between edits you would get different quality of acting. And I don't like to be too hard on actors because I'm not an actor myself. If you put me in this performance, I would probably not do a very good job unless perhaps I had a good instructor and director and all that, and or, it could be anything. But even some of the sequences, like there's a great cameo from Gus Van Sant, one of my favorite filmmakers, and when those two are talking, it doesn't feel very natural. It feels very much like rehearsed dialogue. I don't buy Christian's sincerity. And what I was saying before I kind of got off track, or I went off the track, I should say, is that there's a lot to be admired with the film here. I think that, like I said before, with the abandoned cinemas, there's some interesting directorial choices. And I like the idea of, the underbelly of Hollywood, of just, this, everyone is on drugs and everyone's having, just free sex and the, violence that happens and all that. I mean, it's nothing new. There have been many, many films and television series that have kind of explored the darker sides of that. You have films like, I don't remember, I think it took place in LA. I don't remember, I think The Neon Demon. That's more about modeling, but sort of the same idea of this sort of violent underbelly. And then I talked about, Andrew Dominik's Blonde, which I think is a great film, but that kind of shows sort of the nihilistic sort of underbelly of Hollywood and the manipulation of performers in that regard. But I think this is a very interesting film. And what I had mentioned before with Paul Schrader's recent filmography, at least in the last 15 years or so, is that I think with the exception of First Reformed, which I think is just one of the strongest films and an already impressive filmography, all of his films have really, none of them I think are totally great, but I think have really strong elements in all of them, whether it be a performance or whether it be the way he directs certain aspects. And I think this film is no different because it got kind of brought through the mud, or kind of dragged through the mud for myriad different reasons. People have kind of seen like, oh, it's that disaster of a film, and it's definitely not a disaster. I do think that in part that when a film gets this kind of publicity, positively or negatively, it is so overblown in one aspect or another. How many brand new films come out and people are quick to call it a masterpiece or one of the best films or anything like that. And more times than not, sorry, I've got to silence my telephone there. Everyone's texted me when they know I don't have the time to do it. So I'm going to have to give a brief pause on this. Give me just one moment. Sorry about that. I try not to pause too often because then I lose my train of thought, which I kind of have now. I don't even remember what I was talking about before, but I think what I was mentioning is that with Schrader's recent films is that they all have really strong aspects one way or another. Whereas I don't think any of them are outright terrible, including The Canyons as well. I think it's a very interesting film, and I know I keep using that word, but that is the strongest word I can use on this. Oh, and look at that! It closed out of the thing I was looking at. Beautiful. And I think it is worth watching nonetheless, because I never want to recommend anything that I don't think is worth watching to some extent or another. Whether or not a film's quality is strong or not is completely subjective, but it's more so a matter of contextualizing it. So, like, why would you watch this film? And it's easy to say, well, it's not a very good film, so, why do it? And I think because of those aspects that I mentioned previously, of Schrader's directing, of some of the performances, of just the uniqueness of it all, it's got a certain kind of edge to it where it feels like almost a different sort of reality at times, as well as photographing some of California. There's one sequence where I think it is Ryan who goes into, I think it's Amoeba Records, or it's from in the film, I think that's what it is, but it's this big record store, and the camera kind of pans through and follows him and goes down into the parking garage, and it's all really, really cool, man. I didn't quite, I don't have any strong feelings positively or negatively. I definitely don't think it's anything of like a disaster that I've always heard it out to be, or some kind of awful film. It's definitely not that. And I think that should you be curious about this film, you should, in my opinion, watch it. Of course, in my opinion. It doesn't all work, I think, especially when it gets to the third act, when it deals with some of the stronger kind of violence. It really is a little awkward, but I think this is definitely a film worth watching. And an interesting sort of point in not only Schrader's filmography, but Bret Easton Ellis, who is primarily a novelist. And his filmography as well, because he's also written a couple of films. I think I mentioned last time what were those films? The Informers, and The Curse of... I'm talking about features, I should say. The Curse of Downers Grove and Smiley Face Killers. None of which I've seen. Either way, The Canyons, worth your time. Moving on from there, another contemporary film, and however you define contemporary is completely up to you. Some people may not call this film contemporary. Others would say that contemporary is brand new, or then again, what is brand new? That's all in the eye of the beholder, and the eye is thee. But a film that I rewatched recently after rewatching Sullivan's Travels from 1941 was a film that I had always been a fan of, and has gotten just much better over time. When I say much better, I don't mean to say that I ever negatively thought of the film. I've always enjoyed the film, but with time, it's a film that has only grown stronger and stronger in the headspace, and that is Michel Gondry's 2008 film, Be Kind, Rewind, which stars Jack Black, Danny Glover, and Mos Def, and or his name is Yasin Bey, but I think at the time he was going as Mos Def, because he's been in a handful of films. And it's such a wonderful, cozy film. When I was talking about these sort of films that bring that cozy kind of feeling, a cozy film is not just a film without conflict. It can be, but those kinds of films are not exclusive to the cozy mentality. We all have these films in our general collective that we consider stronger than being just a film that we like a lot. Even if we don't love a certain film, it's a film that brings back any kind of certain memories or brings a certain feeling when one watches, or any of the sort. We all have our own compendium of cozy cinema, and that's why the show is called The Cozy Corner of Cinema, because it's a place to talk about these films, not exclusively cozy films, but films as something more than just pieces of entertainment or a board of directors and executives making something far more than that. And Be Kind, Rewind fits exactly into that narrative. And it's a film, you have these two actors, Jack Black and Mos Def. They play Jerry and Mike, and this takes place in contemporary 2008. I forgot where they were. I think they were in Detroit, or I don't remember exactly where they were. But they're running one of the last VHS rental stores. It's a makeshift kind of operation. It's $1 to rent the film, and but they're aware that at the time, DVDs are big and they're new, and they have the big kind of rental stores that have 20 copies of one film, and you can find any film you want to a certain extent. I mean, people talk about the nostalgia of blockbusters and all that, and I don't have nostalgia for anything, man. I think nostalgia is a waste of time, but when you remember back to the blockbusters and all those sorts, they're not gonna have any kind of you're not gonna find like a Pasolini film or something like that. You're gonna find the populist film, which is fine. The corporate owners they select which films get into the stores, but you remember the ma and pa stores. They're the ones that are gonna have the good stuff. They're the ones that are gonna have the transgressive, unique cinema. But anyway, so Danny Glover, he owns the store. He's going away on a trip. Mr. Fletcher, and he says, Mos Def, run the store and make sure that Jerry, Jack Black, he's not around. He's too much. He causes too many problems. Mos Def says, I should say his character's name is Mike, and he says, okay, Mr. Fletcher, I'm going to do it. You're going to be so proud of me. Well, through a series of events, Jerry ends up getting magnetized, and he goes into the store. He's touching all these videotapes, and you have this lady come in. She's saying, hey, man, the tape is blank. What is going on here? You got another fella in the store. Hey, what the hell? The tape is blank. I paid for a film, and I didn't get a film. And he's like, oh, my gosh, what the hell's going on? It's not verbatim dialogue. Get the idea. Realizes that Jerry accidentally erased all the tapes through his magnetism. So they have the idea. Mia Farrow in the film, she's coming back. She says, I want to watch Ghostbusters on VHS. He can't find anybody who has the VHS. He says, you know what, Jerry? Here's what we're going to do. We're going to remake Ghostbusters. We're gonna Swede it because it's from Sweden, foreign, She's not gonna know. This will be a temporary solution, but they end up doing it to Ghostbusters and Rush Hour 2, and wouldn't you know, it ends up being a big success. The community is like, you know what, man, we want more of these films Sweded, and from there is you get conflict, you get comedy, you get laughs, you get drama. And on the surface, you watch this film and you go, okay, this is a funny kind of film about these two bumbling guys making these movies from memory. I mean, these things are 20 minutes long. They're only remembering the scenes the whole sequence of making these films, and you're like, okay, this would be a fun little comedy. But because Michel Gondry is such a strong filmmaker, this goes beyond that. I should say he also wrote the film as well. Michel Gondry, you'd remember from such terrific films as Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind and The Science of Sleep. And he's just a wonderful filmmaker. He's done tons and tons. I highly recommend looking up his music videos that he did. He's just such a unique filmmaker. And he brings those tendencies as well to the filmmaking here. They have to use certain in-camera techniques to get these films done. So like they have to shoot it in negative while their faces are copied and they're in negative, but they look like they're in color. Or they're, proper, and, he's got to, they're doing, Men in Black, and they have, they have to make the car upside down. They have a bunch of, small cars, on a track, and they're spinning it. It's just, anybody who wants to make films, man. I mean, this is a hell of an inspirational film to go to, man. Just some of the techniques they get. And what I think one of the strongest part of the film, which kind of seals the deal for me, which I think enhances it above being just a fun comedy, is the communal aspect that this film brings. There's a certain point in the film they have to make their own original film as sort of as one last kind of hurrah. And because this town has come together and they're enjoying these ridiculous, silly films, they enjoy seeing themselves in the films, doing whatever they can, not caring so much about the quality of the pictures per se, but about getting together and finishing the product. You get to one sequence in the film, which is it's just so beautiful, and that's why I compare it with Sullivan's Travels, where I think these two would make a fantastic double feature. Is that you have that wonderful sequence at the end of Sullivan's Travels where he's in a bad situation. I won't give too much of spoilers, but they're like, all right, guys, to boost morale, we're gonna watch this film, and he hears everybody laughing hard and enjoying themselves, and he's like, and he gets into it, and he sees this communal sort of aspect of theatrical watching. And when you get to the sequence in Be Kind, Rewind, where the score they're playing, this jazz, and they're watching this film they put together, the light is flickering, people are laughing and smiling and coming together, and then Danny Glover goes outside and he sees the people in the town watching it from the other side. It's just such a beautiful sequence, and where the film ends, it's like, my gosh, man, you wouldn't be surprised if you finished the film with tears in your eyes. It's just such a touching, and that's the word I could say. It's a beautiful film. You have a really kind of natural aspect to a lot of the acting in this film. You also have Melanie Diaz, who was working at a laundromat, or a dry cleaning place, I should say. She starts to become part of it as well. And she sort of starts to join their gang, and the back and forth they all have. It's very natural kind of dialogue that it feels like. It doesn't feel too scripted. It feels kind of like they let a lot of it go. And I think because of that, it is why the film has held up, 15 years later. This was released back in 2008, and I remember even when I saw it back in 2008, liking it, but over time, just that kind of feeling growing and growing, and this last viewing in particular really kind of having that strong aspect where you're watching, you're like, my gosh, man, I'm so happy to be sitting here watching this film. This is not just a forgettable, piece of film that you watch and you go, oh, that was a good film, oh, what'd you like about it? Oh, it was funny, some of the drama was good. You really sit back and you go, like, wow, man, I'm getting something far more existential and almost ethereal when you're watching this, man. And you have this great combination of actors and a great, someone with a great vision like Michel Gondry, and you have just something far, far more unique than in the hands of maybe a lesser filmmaker who wouldn't take who wouldn't do something as interesting with the material. It's just a great, great film that I think even now I still feel has been underappreciated in terms of contemporary kind of cult films. I know it's difficult to sort of analyze, contemporary cult films, because, what is a cult film? How much time should pass? That's all. People have different definitions. There are brand new films that come out that people consider cult films, and, that's completely your prerogative. No one's right or wrong in defining, what they feel one is and isn't. But this one, I feel definitely, if it had some sort of new Blu-ray, or it had some sort of new theatrical kind of showing, I think that if this was doubled with Sullivan's Travels at a boutique kind of cinema, like maybe the Lincoln Center in New York, or the New Beverly Cinema in California, or the what is it, the Music Center or the Music Hall in Chicago. What's the name of that cinema? I don't remember. The Music something, but I think that a greater appreciation would be strong with this. So if you happen to see this pop up, give it a watch. It was funny. I went to go look this up on HBO Max, and I went to or I guess it's just called Max now. And I went to search it, and it was like God put it there, because it was right next to it. It was leaving this month, 2 titles, and then Be Kind Rewind. And I'm like, if that's not a sign, I don't know what is, man. It was just like some sort of force wanted me to watch this film. They're like, Dan, you're gonna watch this film, man. It's right there for you. You don't even have to search for it. We're not gonna put in any sort of difficulty for you. And my gosh, man, I truly feel blessed to have watched such a incredible film like this. So it's really, really excellent stuff. And it's funny talking about before when I was mentioning The Canyons with Paul Schrader and with Be Kind Rewind, the natural sort of acting and filmmaking. I rewatched Blue Collar, Paul Schrader's directorial debut from 1978, starring Richard Pryor, Yaphet Kotto, and Harvey Keitel. They are 3 blue-collar workers working in an automotive factory. They put the pieces together. They have this camaraderie. They don't like their boss. They're just like annoyed by him. They're annoyed by the union as well. They're trying to get stuff done. The union representatives, they don't really care. They're just like, whatever, get back on the line. And they're fed up, man. And the plot in this film, I don't think is as important as when you have these 3 great actors working together. And what I was mentioning before, The Canyons, about the production issues, is that with this film, the camaraderie between these 3 characters, Zeke, Jerry, and Smokey, they play off each other so incredibly well. I should also say this was also written by Paul's brother, Leonard Schrader, as well as Sidney A. Glass. And the film itself, I mean, you enjoy the time with these characters so much. They feel very honest. I mean, much in the same way with Paul Schrader writing Taxi Driver, is that the characters in that film, they feel very honest. They feel very real. Where it's sort of like, I think Paul Schrader did actually work as a taxi driver temporarily for the film, and he got into the mindset of this sort of person. And I don't know if he has any other kind of blue-collar work like this, but everything feels so gelled together. And you enjoy the time with these characters that even when it gets into some of the darker aspects of the film, you actually feel for these characters. You really enjoy being there with them. You understand their plight. Richard Pryor is annoyed because he has a couple of kids and he's lying to the IRS, and he doesn't have enough money from this job, and he's getting fed up. And Jerry is getting fed up as well. They're all dealing with their own problems, but they're also they're not perfect guys. They're flawed characters. They're going out, they're cheating on their wives. They're causing problems. But it's the way that Schrader is so good with these actors, with these performers. On top of all 3 of these already being terrific actors who have done great work in their own right, they come together to make this amalgamation of just a wonderful, great comedy. And it looks like I'm actually kind of running out of time, so I don't have more time to talk about this. I did kind of ramble at the end there. So, guys, it's a wonderful day out. I'm looking outside. The sun is out. It's kind of a nice chill in the air. There's just so much to get done, but we're going to take it one step at a time. We're not going to get over panicked. We're not going to get worried and go, oh my God, I got to do all this. I got to do all that. I want to make 100 films. I want to write 100 books. I want to, write 1,000 screenplays. We're going to do it one step at a time, one page at a time, one word at a time, one scene at a time. We're going to get it done, man, if we have the willpower and the courage to do so. So I appreciate you guys listening yet again, or for your first time. You guys have a wonderful rest of your day, rest of your night, whenever you're listening to this. It's just such a beautiful time to be alive. We don't want to waste it. We're going to make the most out of the life that we got, man. All right. Thank you so much. Take care.